Hey everybody, I'm going to resume talking about my career journey. Today I'm mostly going to be focused on uh, talking about advertising and getting into design work and websites. I'll speak briefly on my edtech experience, and then in another video, I'll probably talk about my most recent role at Sakari, which was an SMS marketing app. So after Fictive, I joined a company called Responsive Ads, which was an advertising platform. We worked with publishers, Condé Nast and NBC, to build creative for their brand partners. And so that was a really different experience, but there were a ton of parallels between uh, production of hardware and production of uh, ads and programmatic advertising. When you build creative, you're actually designing, and we would get requirements from brands and we would design these ads that were responsive in both the X and Y dimension, as well as we introduced a variant system that could uh, alter the assets based on different variables. So you can think of like environmental variables being weather or language. We were building an ad for caviar, and I thought it would be really interesting if we could take the experience from the mobile app and provide that experience in an ad unit. So in advertising, there is a high degree of variability in the aspect ratio of where the ad is going to be placed. They can be long and skinny, they could be square. There's like a standard IAB sizes, and it's more complex than website design. Later I got into building in Webflow, and what is unique about advertising is you have that Y dimension variability as well. In website design, you're most concerned about responsive in the X direction. Um, and so you define breakpoints, like there's standard breakpoints in website design, which are like large uh, desktop, tablet, landscape, mobile, and mobile. And what happens is as a designer, you create the design for typically the largest. Well, with Webflow, it's desktop, and then it cascades down. So the behavior that you define, each lower size will all of those sizes will inherit the behavior until you make changes on those sizes, and then it overrides that. As a person building an ad, you will upload your assets. Say you have, like in a easy example, you'll have a like background image, you'll have a heading, you'll have maybe some description text and a call to action button, and you define the behavior related to how that text changes. If you scale down the size, like say you go from desktop to tablet, and suddenly the text that you had in that heading goes past the viewport, which is the width of the screen, if it's wider than that screen, do you want it to overflow? At responsive ads, you could wrap it and shrink it, or you could just wrap it. Webflow, you can define font size based on the viewport size. So you can have the text scale proportionally with that. So there were a lot of the same types of features that are in Webflow in the responsive ads platform. Like the same concepts still apply, same problems. We were building highly custom ads. So we did, I forget which car company it was, but imagine you're inside a car and you have this Google Maps Street View type of experience where you have different pins and you can select them and see features within the car. And we had the caviar ad. It was a carousel, like a slider. And depending on the layout, depending on the size where that ad was displayed, it would render differently. It would be, maybe it's one carousel and the user could swipe or click the arrows to browse different restaurant recommendations. And where the variant system came into play is our users wanted a way to increase relevancy for target audience. So you want to get as specific as possible with that impression. And so variants are helpful in doing that because you can use environmental data like the weather. Like if you're serving ads to a certain location and the weather is a certain way, you can change that ad experience. The example I use a lot is like a coffee shop. If you're a coffee company and you want an iced coffee background image, if it's a hot day, if it's above 65 degrees for the user, you can do that. And you can have another conditional rule that says if it's below 65 degrees, present this hot coffee instead. Language is a very popular use case. So like enterprise companies who are running ads globally will want to vary based on language. A challenge there is the different languages have larger wording, I guess is the way to explain that. I think German is one of those where it's like you design an ad in English, and then if you translate it, you have to change the font to account for that. You would design the ad once, define the layout at each size and the behavior as the aspect ratio changes, and then go into this preview where you can see all the standard ad sizes and how it's going to be perceived or rendered. One thing that I didn't enjoy as much is like it was a small company. So the business wasn't really set up like a VC company where we were building out a product team. I wanted something that was more in line with my career path. I really enjoyed working on the tool and the experience there, but then I decided to switch to a different role. I got a role at a company called ClassKick, and so I left responsive ads to join ClassKick. And at ClassKick, I was working on an API for connecting students and faculty accounts to the iPad app. There's an SSO called Clever, which is a standard in the education sector, and it allows school systems to manage their rostering all through Clever. which means the organizational structure, um, teachers and classes and students per teacher, and challenges there related to how do we onboard an entire school or district at the beginning of a year and offboard the accounts of a graduating class. So I didn't have a huge impact there. I ended up being laid off there when we got a new VP of product. I was hired to do the sales product, the self-service product for converting trials. And then I shifted to the classroom product, but didn't really get into the problems. So, I ended up getting laid off when the new person arrived, and I struggled to get like enough buy-in from the team on any kind of plan. And this was earlier in my product journey. I don't think I had the confidence to really carve out like a 30, 60, 90-day plan that would win the support of my peers. And so it just, it wasn't the best experience. For my first project, I was working on like a chat bot with Intercom and trying to prove that that could help teachers on a support metric. And it just wasn't the, thing a product person should be going after for their early in their role. It made me seem like I didn't know what I was doing and I was new. And, I was kind of like, I was moving into the support world of things when I should have been working on the app features. I didn't have enough courage to really take the lead and propose the direction for engineering. There were just so many problems, and it didn't feel like a place where I was, being brought in to talk about like, a very grounded like set of issues that the team can all be aligned on to work on. It was in a very stressful phase for the company. I really enjoyed working in ed tech because it was, I have a lot of passion in education. My mother's a teacher. She was a middle school teacher. She was actually my teacher in middle school for double accelerated math, and she was the only one who taught it. And I had a lot of really great, like, I had an amazing physics teacher, and he was also my cross country coach growing up in high school, and excellent like calculus teachers. And so I gravitated towards that side of things rather than like bio, or some of my family went down that route into med school. But I was much more tied to physics and really loved to do like work on problems that were that I had to list assumptions and make sure, like, as long as I documented everything and take it step by step, I knew I was doing the right thing. That's how I still to this day as a product person. It's really the only way to be successful, because there's just problems can be, there's no ceiling to how complex a problem can be. And so you have to be extremely humble in how you step into a company and learn about the challenges. And you can't be afraid, because if you're afraid, like I was at ClassKick, I didn't have enough understanding of the product or the problems that engineering was working on. And um, if you try to lead without taking that time to deeply understand the problems, no one's going to buy into uh, your initiatives. So it just felt like being on an island. But I learned from that lesson, and I think a lot of people in product have you know. I don't want to say skeletons in their closet, but it's a very difficult role, and it really cuts you up, and you have to be ready for that. If you're somebody who loves that, like I love being in the fire, and I have made mistakes before. You just have to be extremely focused on making progress every day, and then knowing how to triage and knowing how to uh, delegate effectively, and how to speak up and ask questions when you don't know something, because it's only going to get more complex if you don't know something you should already know. After ClassKick, I spent some time getting up to speed on my website skills. So I was so passionate about Webflow and building websites that I started doing consulting. I've done like probably 10 to 15 websites now. Some of them my own ideas, but I really have a solid grasp on Webflow now. I also learned Figma quite deeply. I can design components from scratch, and uh, do mocks and prototypes in Figma. Um, so I spent a lot of time learning how those software products work. They're not your uh, hobbyist level platforms for making a landing page. I actually first heard about Webflow when I was at Fictive. Fun fact. And I remember we hired an agency to create this. We called it state of hardware report, and I just remember clicking the link and just seeing the most incredible animations with how the text entered the page. It was like nothing else I have ever seen on uh like the performance of the animation. To some people it doesn't matter, but it took like 2-3 years of my life because I was so obsessed with it. And so I went and learned those products because I was in love with them. I didn't take the conventional route. I haven't received a Webflow partner certificate, but I can build a website in, just like an hour or so. I mean, now you can do it with AI in minutes, but um, yeah, I did a lot of really interesting things. Like I had a website where I I did a podcast and had the podcast audio sync with text in my articles that were served from a collection in Webflow, and you could like click different paragraphs of the article and it would play the audio from the podcast, which came from a distribution platform for that, but it was on Apple Podcasts and um, Spotify. AI started getting really good with like illustrations, and so I started writing narratives and trying to use all AI to do that. Um, so it was a pest of like, I know I could write a better piece, but I want to see if I can have AI do the whole thing. So I had some pretty weird stories. Like, uh, one was inspired by James and the Giant Peach, but it was a plum, and a bunch of insects were got on the Plum and traveled across the sea to San Francisco. And then there was a rogue wave, and uh, a bunch of seagulls picked them up. And the seagulls were investors, they were angel investors. And they got brought to Alcatraz, which was converted into a co working space. And then they ate pretzels, and that was the end of it. But what was fun about doing that work was trying to get successive illustrations to have the same accuracy for the uh, character appearance, which was quite difficult. Now I'm doing a lot of like Webflow's AppGen beta product. I'm using that a lot. I know MemberStack pretty well, so I use that for having Webflow did have a user's product, but they sunsetted it and are now focused on Webflow Cloud. So I'm trying to align with where they're going. I built a few apps already in it. One is clouddancer.io, and the other is promptshelf.io. I did PromptShelf before manually in Webflow, but then I rebuilt it in just a few days with the AppGen product. And so it's really great. I highly recommend it. I have had success. The thing that you want to be careful of is it's not something you want to use. Actually, I would backtrack. I was going to say it's not something you want to use if you have a design system, but it's getting to that point where like you can attach components. And I did that successfully. I had a footer in my website, and the way you set it up is you build the website and then you set up with AppGen. You can create the app experience, and then you can pull in components from your website design system that way and have the AI recreate them. Or, I don't know what's happening on the back end. That's really exciting because I have been able to, like, literally in last week, I wanted to start doing videos, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have a personal website now. So they have a new AI site builder, and I use the site builder to build a website. It's super fast. And so I did that. And then I used AppGen for one page specifically, which was the videos. Like if you go look at my personal website, I have a link in the nav bar that says video post. You click that. That's actually governed by the AppGen. So I used prompting to create a page that used the design system that I already had to render iframes with YouTube embeds. And so I'm going to be doing my videos through YouTube. So I thought that was the best decision. That's it for now. Okay. Thanks, everyone. Bye.